Hello, 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 and welcome to the California African American Museum. For those of you that I have not yet had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Alexandra Mitchell, and I have the distinct honor of serving as the Manager of Education and Public Programs here at CAM. We are absolutely delighted that you've chosen to spend a little bit of your time with us for this incredibly special and rare public program. In today's conversation, we have Barbara Chase-Riboud and Deborah Willis. We are, of course, celebrating I Always Knew with artist, poet, and novelist Barbara Chase-Riboud's new memoir. I Always Knew is an intimate and vivid portrait of her life told through the letters she wrote to her mother, Vivian Mae, between 1957 and 1991. In candid detail, Riboud tells her mother about her life in Europe and her work as an artist, her romances, and her journeys around the world. Dr. Deborah Willis, our moderator for today, is the University Chair and Professor of the Department of Photography and Imaging at the Tisch School of the Arts at New York University and has affiliated appointments with the College of Arts and Sciences, the Department of Social and Cultural Analysis, and the Institute of Fine Arts, where she teaches courses in photography and imaging, iconography, and cultural histories, visualizing the Black body, women, and gender. She's also the director of New York University's Center for Black Visual Culture and the Institute for African American Affairs. Her research examines photography's multifaceted histories, visual culture, contemporary women photographers, and beauty. Among many of her awards, she's received the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Fellowship, as well as the Richard D. Cohen Fellow in African American Art, the Hutchins Center at Harvard University, and a John Simon Guggenheim Fellow, and an Alphonse Fletcher Jr. Fellow, among many others. Barbara Chase-Riboud is an American visual artist and sculptor, best-selling novelist, and award-winning poet. After becoming an established sculptor and poet, she gained widespread recognition as an author for her novel on Sally Hemings. It earned the Janet Kafka Prize in Fiction and became an international success. Chase-Riboud has received numerous honors for her literary work and career, including the Carl Sandburg Prize for Poetry and the Women Caucus for Arts Lifetime Achievement Award. Barbara Chase-Riboud and Betty Saar were the first African-American woman to exhibit at the Whitney Museum of American Art, following protests organized by Faith Ringgold to gain more recognition of Black women artists. In 1996, she was commissioned, among many other artists, for artwork at the African Burial Ground National Monument in Lower Manhattan. Her 18-foot bronze memorial, Africa Rising, was installed at the Ted Wise Federal Building in 1998, and she also wrote a poem to accompany the sculpture. Today, of course, we are celebrating the memoir, which we hope you will purchase. Her latest exhibition will open at MoMA on May 5th. It's entitled The Encounter of Barbara Chase-Riboud and Albert Giacometti. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Deborah Willis and Barbara Chase-Riboud.
Thank you. What a beautiful welcome, and it's wonderful to be here and to share a moment with Barbara Chase-Riboud. I have been a fan for years and also respect for the vision and the writings of Barbara. So Barbara, welcome. I have a few questions. I feel like I have too many, but I have a few that I'd like to share. So your book offered me an intimate biographical period of your life. And I was curious about how you use photography in your writing and reflections to come up with the title, I Always Knew. What does that mean? How did you come up with that title?
The title was given to me by a famous novelist, Gore Vidal, the author of Burr, the author of Lincoln. And I met him in Italy and at a conference, and I asked him to sign his latest book, and he signed his latest book. I wish I had written Sally Hemings. So we became friends, and he said that it was the best title he had ever heard of. I always do.
Wow.
He said it opened up everything, and if anybody wants to use it, and I said, I think I want to use it, I will. And so it's thanks to him, actually.
Wow. You know, it opens up so many questions and so many ideas about you and your work. Specifically when reading your letter, the letters that you shared with your mother and your mother shared with you, it just felt like she
Well,
always
yes,
knew.
well, the interesting thing about that is there are no letters from my mother.
Right.
I didn't save one of them, and she saved 600 of them.
Uh,
And but it is not a one-sided conversation.
that's why I felt that you were writing to her at the same time. I guess through your reflections, the pages and the reflections.
No, it's very strange. It's not a diary. It's not a memoir. It's not an autobiography. It was letters that I was writing not for posterity, not even for myself. I was writing to my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to make her happy. I wanted to amuse her. I wanted to let her know what was going on in my life so far away from her. And these letters were a kind of thank you note for letting me go, for letting me get on that boat and letting me, sort of try my wings in Europe, go to the American Academy, travel around the world. And of course, afterwards, I married a man who traveled around the world, constantly. So this was my thank you note to her.
And that's what I felt when just the excitement that she felt, the pride. As you know, I'm from Philadelphia. I grew up in North Philly. Your mother and my mother had the same family doctor, Dr. Helen Moorhead.
I found that amazing.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I didn't know.
I used to hear your stories through our family doctor. So
really?
just because your mother visited the day before or the same day. So I felt this connection to you because of Dr. Moorhead, a Black doctor, a woman doctor in Philadelphia. But the way that you shared the intimacy of your travel, the intimacy of your relationships with your mother, it's really unusual during that time. And your selection of photographs, I'd like to just go back to how you decided who was the family caregiver of the photographs, who took care of the photographs, given the fact that your grandfather
I was married for 40 years to a photographer.
Right.
The other collection of photographs were mostly photographs of my mother, from my mother's side of the family, because she was an immigrant. She was British, and she didn't get naturalized American until I was 17 years old, even older than that.
Yeah.
So, she had this kind of British side and Canadian side, and she was the one who kept all the photographs. And since I didn't have any photographs in mind when I was writing the letters, my editor finally, the woman who sort of made the chronology and put the letters in chronological order, just took everything I had in a huge box, all mixed up, centuries, decades, whatever. And she herself sort of picked out, not knowing the history, only from the letters, which photographs to use.
Work in that section.
Yeah.
But just going back to World War I and your great grandfather, just to think about you as an international person, here you start off with your great grandfather, as well, fighting the 369th.
The story is an international story.
Yes.
It begins in Canada and in Haiti, and sort of ends up in Baltimore, and then goes to Paris, and then Rome, and then back to Paris, and then to Africa, and then to Egypt, and then to all the places that I travel to. So it's an enormous, I mean, the index in this book is amazing. I can't believe it. You mean I really met all these people?
It is. I'm just thinking about images. I'm going to go back and forth with you about some of the images. I love the way that you're walking the streets in China, but then also in Spain, you're dancing with James Baldwin. Who captured that image? Did your husband capture
that? That is a Mark Reboot photo.
Yeah.
We went together to an international award in Spain, and he was there, of course, to photograph. And every international writer on the earth was there. Henry Miller was there, Baldwin was there, everybody. And that's when, we had the party. Yeah. And that's when I decided that we were going to dance together. And Baldwin, that weekend, actually, first of all, I became friends with him, lifelong friends with him. And second of all, he explained to me what he meant when this title he chose, I Am Not Your Negro.
Oh.
I remember sitting on the grass with him, as he one by one explained to me what he meant. And I have used that grid up until now.
That's amazing. That is such a great story. When thinking about your travels, Ebony magazine, 1958, you're on the cover of Ebony magazine. And, my mom had a beauty shop, so I grew up in a beauty shop.
Listen, my mother had such a good time with that cover. You cannot imagine.
That circulated throughout North Philadelphia and everywhere I knew. And I was,
Philadelphia. She was running up and down Market Street.
Right. Can you tell me about do you remember who photographed? Was that Moneta Sleep? Was he the photographer who photographed you on the cover in Rome?
The photographer?
Yes.
Had been sent from New York to the American photographer. No, as a matter of fact, it wasn't. It was an Italian photographer.
Oh, okay.
No, it was an Italian photographer who was assigned to take this cover picture.
It is such an important pose, the way that it's set, from fashion to beauty to art, and how you were exploring what it meant to be an international figure, specifically in 58, when there are so many things going on in this country, so with the civil rights movement and the death of Emmett Till, all of these moments that are combined to seeing, a Black woman, a beautiful Black woman, an artist, fashionably dressed and representing the art of representing your art, what it meant to be at the American Academy. Can you talk about how you shared that with your mom and what, because the other photograph that I felt really fascinating, because, I'm a photographer, so I was reading the photographs. In 57, you're on the ship. And
yes, exactly.
Your mom's letting you go. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Can you talk about that? What it felt like to have that sense of freedom that many of us did not see in the news and here in the US?
Well, of course, I was having all kinds of adventures in Rome at the time. I was also a quote unquote movie star because by a coincidence and sort of luck, I got to play in Ben-Hur, And this was the money that I earned that I spent on going to Egypt.
That's so
So, it was just one round after the other. And my mother was so amazed. And she never got over that.
amazing.
That all of a sudden, not only was I a movie star, but I was also in Egypt. What was I doing in Egypt? Okay.
The photos of you are in Egypt are, representative of the stories we've heard in reading the history, but also the sculptures that you stood in front of. Did that enhance your three-dimensional form in creating your work in terms of the boldness of your work? Going to Egypt, did that kind of enhance your experience as an artist?
Egypt, I think, was the turning point, not only in my life, because actually I met the best friend of my first husband there as a photographer. And so, everything started with Egypt. And when I returned to Europe, this was what sort of propelled me to Yale University.
Mm-hmm.
And to finish my studies as an architect because of what I had found and felt in North Africa. It was not just Egypt, and then later it was all of North Africa, and then it was South Africa, and then it was the whole continent.
Right. You, just to follow that, to go back into the letters, could you share with us how you discovered the letters, the cache of 600 plus letters?
I discovered the letters at the death of my mother. I just opened up her closet door, and there was this box, this kind of sort of luminous, pale, sort of iridescent box in metal. And something told me, don't open this box. This could be anything. This could be another life. This could be another love. This could be, another woman. Mm-hmm. And it took me a long time. But when I did open it, I discovered that there were my love letters to my mother.
Wow.
And that was all that was there. And it was 600 of them. And I sort of read these letters. I sort of said, not now. I'm not going to read them now. Mm-hmm. I closed the lid. I locked it. I put it in a safety deposit box. And it wasn't until 8 or 9 years later that I took that box out and I sat down and I read those letters. And that's when I realized that they were love letters to my mom.
Yeah,
and that her voice was there. I didn't have one letter from her, but her whole voice, her whole being was there, listening to this little chattering girl, sort of hysterically running around the world and trying to do everything at once, stand on her head, a la Josephine Baker. And this was what I discovered. And so I finally asked a graduate student at the University of California to put the letters in chronological order and to type them up because they were handwritten on that airmail letter
Yes,
that she
yes.
owned, red, white, and blue, in the margins everywhere, both sides. And that's what he did. And that's when I knew that, that my mother was there. She was there in all her glory.
Yes.
And it stayed that way until I did the Pulitzer show in 2 years ago.
Mhm.
And I gave them to the director of the museum, thinking that she could use it as for the chronology, because the dates were all there, they were all in order, and they could help her do the catalog.
Mhm.
She, without telling me, sent the letters to Princeton University Press.
Wow,
And
that's
Princeton University Press said, we will publish them.
that is so beautiful. So
And,
beautiful.
and that's exactly what happened.
And that's why you're, as you say, it's not a memoir, but it's that combination of autobiography and memoir, but
It's people are saying it's a new genre.
it definitely is.
Because
It's beyond category.
it kind of reverses everything. It reverses, the kind of structure of autobiography, because it goes afterwards. So what I added to the letters was a kind of commentary on myself from the perspective of now. So, I'm thinking, who is this silly girl? What is she doing? What does she think she's doing? And I laughed my head off. They're very funny letters. They're very funny, and you will laugh.
Yeah.
You will cry a little bit, but mostly you would just shake your head, as I did. And the publisher was delighted. And then they kept putting more and more photographs in it. Normally, it's a book of letters, so there are no photographs. In this particular book, they just kept piling on the photographs because they seemed to be so essential to the story.
But it also gave us an opportunity to see a vision, your vision, but your mother as a visionary woman,
Exactly.
So that's what was so important for that. So it's like your poetry, it's like poetic in a sense. Like you have a title of your poetry book, From Memphis to Peking, that also reminds me of this. But I also wondered, did you think of this not just a reading experience because of the visions that I see? Have you thought about doing an audio production of this book?
Well, I can't see how we could do a movie of it. So maybe, maybe a documentary, but it's so, in a way, it's so vast. There's no way that you can sort of get it down to a single movie. I don't know.
But I see this I love your greetings with dear mother, dear grandpa, you know what I mean? I've never written my grandfather a letter, grandpa was always grandpa, we say hello, but just the fact that I had never had an opportunity to write a letter to my grandfather, but this is the unique experience that I'm experiencing that.
And what happened was that I had to learn a lot about my grandfather, who was the most silent man I had ever encountered. I knew nothing about him.
Mhm.
I had a few photographs. The only sort of memory we had was that he was a World War I veteran, and that when he died, the War Department gave him a military funeral. We didn't know anything about his time in France, but he spent 3 years here. He never got home. It took him that long to get home.
It's so amazing.
So what I did, I sort of invented a life for him in France. I have no idea what happened to this man in France, why he stayed for so long before he came back, why he married the fiance of his best friend.
That's another story.
And so it becomes another novel.
Mhm, mhm. But do you imagine him meeting James Reese Europe and the band? You know,
Exactly.
369.
Exactly.
It's so fantastic. But
No,
sharing
I am so happy about that section of the book, because I didn't know my grandfather until I read my own letters.
Mhm, mhm. That's so great. So within the mission of having this opportunity to walk through your life, it was, it was embracing for me, but at the same time I was teary-eyed, and my personal experience of wanting to know more about how you felt. So I'm curious, what happened to your letters? What happened to her letters, that the ones that did you throw them out, or that you received from her? What happened to those?
They disappeared into
Moving and things like that.
into the whirlwind, into the hurricane.
Mhm.
It was something, I don't know. I might have kept the letters for a few years,
Mhm.
but I never, I never sort of systematically did it. And it's thoughtless. It's loveless. I should have done it, but I didn't.
Right. But I bet you'll find them somewhere.
And
Yeah.
then when I read them, when I read them 30 years later, 40 years later,
Mhm.
I realized that she was there in those letters,
Yeah.
as clear as day.
Mhm.
And that I was there, and that the relationship between the two of us was there.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you have these three different voices, all, mixed up together.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody should write a book about the book.
I think there will. I really think someone's going to do a movie about this. I can see it. I really feel it. I'm just now want to talk about shopping, those moments of where you had these moments with your mother, and then your wedding, like your mother, all of our mothers saved our birth certificates, like you had to write to your mother to get your birth certificate so that you could get married. So,
Right.
so I'm just curious about her sense of, she was the archivist in a sense,
Of course, and that's obvious. It's obvious in the book. By the time you close the book, you know who is boss.
Right.
Not me.
Yeah.
It
So,
wasn't. Mhm.
so did you, in terms of purchasing items, did you ever think of a scarf or a dress? Because she was really fashionable in those photographs. So I was just curious, did you ever share any special items with her over a time that?
I shared everything with her.
Mhm.
We were of that generation that that dressed alike. We
Yeah.
had mother and daughter dresses
Yeah,
that
yeah.
she made because she was also a seamstress.
Mhm.
And so, my God, um, mother and daughter,
Mhm.
we were there.
Yeah,
all
and that sense of artistry is also found in the writings about that. But we have a few more minutes left. I wanted to ask you about some of the artists you met in Europe and in American artists you met in Europe, as well as European artists such as Dali and Picasso, and the artists that you met on the streets. I was curious about you shared some of those moments with her. How did you just share those moments with her, what it meant to you to meet some of these artists, some of the street scenes?
Of course, I didn't discuss my professional life with her. Only the people that would interest her, or the people who had some kind of relationship to me. It was not, sort of pretentious, intellectual, what have you. It was really girl talk.
Mhm.
So if it wasn't, I told her, of course, I told her about James Baldwin. I told her about Henry Miller. I told her about the Sartre and Malraux and all these guys, sort of offhandedly. But we never had discussions, artistic discussions, let's put it that way. It was always very personal and very intimate, and very sort of exciting, because I was trying to amuse her. I was trying to bring her into my life because she was so far away.
Mhm.
And I realized that she had given me this incredible gift of letting me go.
Right. Which is
Uh,
really hard when we think of mother-daughter bond that you had, letting you go. And I just remember in reading the letters and your experiences about as a child going to the museums with her.
yes,
Um,
exactly.
right. So as we close, we have about like 3 minutes left. Is there anything you want to add to? You did share your art with her because she encouraged you in many ways, as I
Not
see it in the letter.
not only did she encourage my art, but at the end of her life, I encouraged her art,
Mhm.
because she took up painting.
Mm.
She took up painting as an old woman,
Mhm.
as a and she was damn good. She was really very good in in that sort of first primitive religious expressions. So I have one painting of her in my living room of the Last Supper, and there's only one other composition throughout art history where there are 12 disciples with their backs to the audience. There's that's it.
Right,
And
right.
she managed to paint that. My jaw just sort of opened up,
Yeah.
because the other painter who had this composition was from the 12th century, a 12th century Italian painter.
What a life. What amazing. What a vision. So I want to thank you for this, but I was curious if you had any comments that you'd like to end with as we share for everyone to make sure that they run out and purchase this book. And
I would love everyone to go out and purchase this book, not only because of her and what what we meant to each other, but to sort of, you know, one of the guys who did some of the translations on the letters, when he had finished doing that, he wrote me this letter, just said, "I wish I'd had a mother like that."
It's so beautiful.
And so I just hope that everybody that reads it thinks about their own mother. And if some of them can say, you know, "I wish I had a mother like that," that's all I would like.
What a perfect ending. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Dr. Deborah Willis. Thank you so much, Barbara Chase-Riboud. As we are closing our celebration of Women's History Month, I can't think of a more perfect closing. So thank you both for your work. We have, as I mentioned, are honored to have this conversation. Please do purchase that book. The Princeton University Press will be able to share a special discount code as well that was shared with us from the publisher. So thank you to the publisher for that. We also hope you'll be out to that exhibition at MoMA in the beginning of May for the opening. Please do keep an eye out for that.
Don't forget that the exhibition at MoMA opens to the public on May 6th. It is Barbara Chase-Riboud, Alberto Giacometti, The Encounter.
Incredible. So we look forward to that exhibition. Thank you both. Everybody have a great day. Be safe. And thank you for joining us tonight at CAM. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.